Today I want to tell you guys how almost dying changed my life. This one isn't for the faint of heart. It's become apparent over time to me that I'm the kind of person that does things other people would be uncomfortable doing. And I don't mean this in an extreme way, but if you've been following the channel, what I really mean here is, I didn't go to university. I was an ambitious person. I decided I don't want to go to school. I want to start my own company. I mean, that's something that's uncomfortable. And I mean, for me, I had to go into a business where I did a lot of cold calling and getting on the phone with people and facing a lot of rejection. Really uncomfortable for a lot of people. YouTube is a perfect example. Getting in front of a camera and just kind of talking about myself, uncomfortable. I've been known to hold unpopular opinions and just do things that are a little outside of the norm, that make me kind of seem weird. And I totally understand that, and I totally get that. And a lot of people sometimes ask me, where did that come from? If I'm having a conversation with someone over a coffee and I kind of tell them the story of my trajectory, they'll say, well, how did you ever even land on that as the thing you were going to do next? Like skip university and start a company. For me, I didn't really know, and only through the last couple years has it started to really set in where this all came from. And there's certain people that I know where I think, wow, how did they think to do that? Now, I think I know where this did come from, and it starts with a couple stories that you have to know about me, and it's a very impactful period of my life. So when I was about 12 years old, my parents left for Hawaii. Good for them. And they dropped me off at my cousin's place. It was rural, out in the country somewhere, nowhere near a city. And we were all hanging around one day, me and my brothers, and they've got this farm dog, right? And essentially what happens, I'm sitting there hanging out, doing whatever a 12-year-old does in the middle of nowhere, and my brother yanks on this dog's tail. He's super young, he's 8 years old. We're playing around, and all of a sudden, all I remember is just a barking noise and just a flash in my face and being like, whoa, what the heck just happened? I look down and there's just blood everywhere, and everything's just hazy and I can't really tell what's going on, and I feel like I'm almost in shock immediately. And my brother looks at me and just starts screaming and going crazy, and I'm like, what the heck's going on? And I realize, okay, I'm the one who has been hurt here, and essentially what happened is I got attacked by this dog, but everything happened so quick. And I run and I look inside of a mirror, and I look like Voldemort. My nose is gone. The whole nose, everything is gone, and I'm just completely in this state of panic and shock, and it immediately hits me. I am nowhere close to a hospital. I don't know what's gonna happen here. So essentially, very quickly, my relatives came in and saw this, and they start freaking out. My aunt essentially stuffs my face into a towel just to make sure to stop the bleeding, and we hop in a car and we start rushing into the city, which is an hour away. So we're on our way to the city, speeding down these gravel roads, doing 200 kilometers an hour. And there was a really funny part of this I actually remember. My uncle said, honey, slow down, you're gonna get us all killed. And I'm like, all killed? Am I being killed right now? Am I the one who's being killed? And I'm in this state where for an hour, I'm speeding down a highway with my own thoughts, feeling like I'm gonna die. That was my really first brush with the feeling of death. And of course we get to the hospital and they see me and they rush me right into the emergency room, start doing stitches. They have all these specialists come in, they start doing skin grafting, they start reconstructing my nose. Fun fact, my whole nose, the front part of it is fake, it's reconstructed. As you can tell, I have a pretty big nose. All that being said, I end up fine, okay, and I recover. And it was a very frightening experience, and if you've ever had an experience that felt like near death, it's very interesting. It's something that you don't really know how to explain. It's almost like you're apart from yourself. You kind of go outside of yourself and see yourself from a different view. But the funny thing was, okay, I'm recovering, I get stitched up, it's fine. 2 months later, I'm outside of my school, and I'm playing around with a group of kids and doing what kids do in elementary school, whatever it was, 12 years old. 10 years old, maybe even earlier, somewhere around that time, and there's a flagpole, and everybody always climbs the flagpole. It's like this little thing we do. So I'm up there climbing the flagpole, and essentially every flagpole, if you look, now that I've told you, you will look and you'll see them, they all have a hook that sticks out of the flagpole where you wrap this rope around that keeps the flag up, right? So I'm playing around, I'm climbing this flagpole, and some kid comes by and smacks my leg, and I completely slip and lose my grip, and I'm probably 7-8 feet up, and I fall, and this hook gets stuck in my rib cage, and now I'm hanging there because I'm not tall enough to reach the ground. and I feel the hook just going deeper and deeper, and I have a scar from about here to here, probably not safe for YouTube to show, and when I have my shirt off or I'm at the beach, everybody immediately knows, like, oh, something bad happened to this guy. And I can feel the hook kind of in my ribs. So that we had to get some teachers come out because people saw that I was struggling there, and they had to kind of like lift me up and off this hook like a puzzle piece. And I was just blown away because, again, I'm in this complete state of shock. I'm like embarrassed, and I'm also, again, my shirt is soaked completely wet, and I'm like, wow, I am sweating profusely. I don't know why, but again, it was that moment where I was completely removed from the situation in utter shock. And the funniest thing is I, in all the pain I was in, kind of just hunched over and grabbed myself, and my carpool took me home. It was like a 5-minute drive, 10-minute drive. I get home and I lift up my shirt. I can see ribs, I can see muscle tissues, I can see fat, everything's kind of pulsating in and out. I can see all of my like internal side of my chest. It was like, that was like just a reinitiation of shock, like, whoa, I'm gonna probably die here, so I should get somebody. So my mom and my brother come into the bathroom and they start freaking out. And my mom's like, get in the car, we're going to emergency. It was nuts. I've never seen her break so many rules. Every single red light, taking the curb, going around through the shoulder, got us to emergency in like 10 minutes. We get in there. I don't even go to the reception and tell them what's going on. I just walk in there and hold up my shirt. And essentially someone comes and grabs me, throws me on a table, starts wheeling me into the emergency room. And so these doctors come in and they start seeing what's going on. And one funny thing is how confident they were. They're like, oh yeah, you'll be fine. And I was like, I think I'm going to die. There's literally stuff coming out of me. This is not good. And essentially what happens is they put me, they put all this different freezing in and anesthesia, and I'm out, and they were operating on me, fixing this thing up. And essentially I come back to my senses. Both my parents are in the room, and I'm like, whoa, that was pretty nuts, wasn't it? And like all throughout this process, they kept finding new things. Like, oh, the hook actually went into his armpit in a bunch of places, so we have to get him back under and keep doing stitches. And I was in this whole, like, I had 48 stitches or 50 stitches within like a 3-month period between like the dog and the flagpole. And that was a really difficult one. That was a lot of pain. Getting those stitches in and out was terrible. But then the funniest thing is like 2 months later, okay, I'm recovering from this. You should see me. I'm like a rag doll. I've got, my nose looks like I'm demented because I'm still recovering. My chest is all screwed up. And I remember I was still going to go to guitar lessons because I love playing the guitar. I was getting lessons at the time. And I go, it's like a rainy day outside. I get in the car on the driveway, which is like sloped, obviously. Most driveways kind of slope towards the street. And there's traffic going by on the street behind. And I'm just kind of sitting in the car waiting for my parents to take me to guitar lessons. But it's a standard transmission. It's the kind of car that you can knock into neutral without it being on. And you can see where this goes. I'm sitting in this car, and I knock it into neutral, and the car just starts going backwards down this hill, and I'm in it. And I'm like, whoa, okay, there's traffic behind me. Like, this is a snap decision. There's traffic behind me. I'm slowly rolling into this traffic in this car. I need to get out of this thing. But the car's moving pretty quick, and I'm like, it's now or never. So I swing the door open and jump out, but the car's moving too fast that I can't really get my gripping, and it's wet out, and I slip. And the car goes over my neck and my back and my shoulder, and I essentially, by good fortune, saved the car from getting smashed in the traffic because I actually act as kind of a stop, like it pinned on top of me. So the really tricky thing about that experience is I wanted to yell for help, but there's so much weight of the car in my lungs that I couldn't get air in to yell for help. So I was stuck under there for probably 3 minutes, and my neighbors came out, and they were like, they started screaming. My friend comes up to me, and I remember looking at him. I was like, it's kind of dramatic, but in this voice that has no breath, I said, "I'm gonna die. Like, I think I'm gonna die." And he was like, "No, dude, you're gonna be fine. You're gonna be fine." They run in and get my dad, and essentially, if you know anything about a standard transmission, the wheels will slip when it's wet and you're trying to accelerate. And I'm acting as a stop. My dad gets in the car, turns it on, and tries to drive the car off me, but the wheels are spinning on my back. And it's just this terrible, terrible experience. Finally, we get the car rocking, gets it off me, and from there, again, get inside, scrub all the dirt and the blood out of you, back to the hospital, that whole sort of thing. So this all happened within like a 6 to 9 month period where it was like over and over and over again, just stitches and feeling like I was gonna die and all this kind of stuff. You know where this is going. About a couple of years later, now we have a bigger gap in between. I'm on a family vacation, And I've really, really terrible asthma. Every single place I go, I bring this with me, okay? Because my lungs are bad, okay? So we're all out on this beautiful family evening. It's great. Again, I'm like 12, 13 years old. And I notice like, oh, my chest is really tightening up, like I need my inhaler. And I reach down and it's not there. And I'm like, oh, like it's always there. It's not there. And I start breathing faster and faster, and I'm having like a pretty intense asthma attack. And I realize that, okay, my inhaler is actually back at the hotel, which is like 25 minutes away. So I start getting more and more nervous, and my parents start getting more and more nervous because I'm having to lie down and I can't feel my feet, and I'm just not really getting much oxygen. And essentially I go into a state of panic. I go into the state where, again, like my mind dissociates from my body, and I feel this weird sense of like panic and peace at the same time. And I'm like, whoa. And I had to lay out in the backseat of the car. My brothers were like asking my parents, like, is he okay? Like, is he gonna die? And again, I felt like I was going to die. And this was this crazy like couple month to year long experience where I was just encountering death over and over and over again in this crazy way. And so we get to the hospital, I'm alive, they get the inhaler in my mouth, I start breathing, I'm getting okay again. And then the next day we go to this outlet mall, my family's all hanging out, and I start getting the asthma feeling again. I'm starting to panic, I'm like, uh-oh. And I reach down, the inhaler's at the hotel again, and I don't have it. And the exact same thing happens the second day. If you've ever had trauma of the same sort multiple times in a row, like I had with my lungs collapsing when I was on a family vacation, you can be susceptible to something called agoraphobia. And essentially what that is it's an extremely comical mix of the fear of death with the fear of embarrassment. And agoraphobia is no joke. It's kind of synonymous with panic disorder. It's like you start to panic and believe you're gonna die out of nowhere, you start sweating profusely. Here'd be an example, okay? For the next 2 years of my life, I struggled with this effectively what was a mental illness. And I realized that, okay, for instance, I'm in a movie theater, okay? And you sit down and you're about to watch the movie and you realize, shoot, like I'm in the middle of this section and there's an aisle like 10 seats that way and there's an aisle 10 seats that way and there's like all these people beside me, and if I start breathing heavy again and I start breathing too deeply and I'm gonna have to get up and embarrass myself and these people are gonna wonder where I'm going, and oh my goodness, I'm breathing deeply now, oh my goodness, I'm gonna die, and I'd start sweating, and you get into this mental cycle of just always thinking that you're about to die for some reason. It is the most wild thing ever. There was a year-long period where I didn't leave my house on my own volition. I would only leave if I was forced to. There was a summer where all my friends were hanging out, socializing. I didn't leave my bedroom once. And I tried to get out. Like I tried to see if I could walk to my doorstep or if I could walk to the end of my driveway. I couldn't do it. I was so afraid that if I was away from somebody who understood my condition, or if I was away from a hospital, that I would die, and I'd go into a state of panic and I'd embarrass myself and all these sorts of things. Agoraphobia and panic disorder was no joke. It was actually terrifying, and people would call me, I went from being a social butterfly to being antisocial, they would call me, and people would make fun of me because I wouldn't come out anymore. But no one really understood that like I physically couldn't without going into this panic state. The way I overcame all of that was I decided eventually, like after multiple years and like not being able to get onto a plane or not being able to go to a friend's house or not being able to do certain things without freaking out, I decided enough was enough, and I just did the only thing I could think of doing, which actually in retrospect is called exposure therapy. And I decided, okay, I'm gonna list out all the different things that trigger this. I'm gonna list out all the different things that send me into this haywire state of mind, and I'm just gonna do them over again and over again and over again until this is gone. And that was probably one of the hardest experiences of my life. I had to go into situations that made me feel like I was gonna die, and I had to sit there with that feeling for an hour and see if I could handle it. And it got progressively better each time. And after doing it 20 times, I started to get back to normal. I could get out again without panicking as much, and I could talk myself down from all these things. And what's all this about, Josh? Like, what's the whole point here? What are we talking about? I think people who are watching this channel are watching it because maybe they're trying to improve their station in life. They're looking at their finances, their investments, or maybe they want to start a business or become a financial advisor, okay? And the unique perspective that I think I can provide here is that I have seen two different sides of fear. There's kind of like real fear, where you're actually close to death, and fake fear, which is kind of an internal cycle of your mind talking to itself, telling you that you're going to die versus the real fear, which is you actually feel like you're going to die. And if you've ever had a near-death experience, you might understand. It's like when you have a near-death experience, it feels like you're outside of yourself, disconnected from yourself. It feels like you're in pain and in shock, but at a sense of peace. And it feels like you're going to fight, and it feels like you're going to work against it, okay? When you have some sort of mental issue like panic disorder, agoraphobia, what that was for me was all internal. Instead of being so external for myself, I was overly internal, thinking and shying away and not fighting. It was more of a withdrawal or a retreat. In the fight or flight, when you're actually going to die, it's fight. And when you're not, you're talking yourself into a loop. It's that flight feeling of withdrawal, right? Now, where this all relates is that as I grew up and as I realized there were things in life that I wanted, that I've talked about on this channel, like I wanted a good lifestyle. I wanted to be successful in my career. I wanted to have cool things. I wanted to travel the world. I had all these desires, right? And when most people articulate those desires or tell somebody about it, they're met with objections, right? Like, oh, starting a business? Yeah, but that's risky. Or, traveling the world, that's gonna take money. You're gonna have to work hard and make sacrifices. Oh, you want that car? Well, you're gonna have to burn bridges and you're gonna have to do this. These were all things that they're objections that get thrown your way when you articulate your goals to somebody else. And I think I was able to differentiate between what was real fear and what was fake fear, because my mind was able to tell the difference between the two, right? When you want to go and start your own business, you have this feeling of like internal talking to yourself, this feeling of maybe anxiety or panic, or this feeling of like withdrawal, like you're nervous to put yourself out there. That's not what death feels like. You're not in danger. And the reason you're not is because the feeling of being close to death does not feel like that. You're feeling the fake side of fear. So my mind was capable of discerning, and it was telling me, hey, when you're feeling that kind of fake fear, that means there's something that you have to do to get through it, to get over it, if that makes sense. When it came to starting a business, that feeling of, oh, this is scary, this is uncharted territory, that fake fear was almost telling me, okay, you have to do it to get through that. When I had to start cold calling, right, to start my financial services business, no one likes cold calling. That's freaky. You're calling random people, trying to start a conversation, trying to ask them to become a client of yours or get that conversation moving. I bet 90% of people would freak out trying to do cold calling, right? For me, that was like, it was fake fear. It was internal fear. It was a fear that I was not related to death. It was my brain trying to convince me I was in danger, but I wasn't. It was just that cycle, right? And the same thing went for going out on my own after high school, not going to university, holding opinions that people don't like that I hold. These sorts of things, they can feel dangerous because your mind tells you you're in danger to be out of that status quo, out of that norm. But I was so blessed and so fortunate to have gone through those experiences to realize that when you feel that fake fear, that means you have to go through it and not around it. Don't get me wrong, I'm a fearful person. I'm afraid of danger. I'm afraid of things. It's not like I'm fearless, but I can tell when it's anxiety and it's mental and internal versus when it's an actual external threat. So guys, that's how having a near-death experience changed my life. And if it helps whatsoever, I'm not sure how I can make this applicable to you, but the reality is anything that you feel like is preventing you from developing, getting started investing, buying a rental property, starting your own business, all these things that will free you and make you feel happy and get your conscience in a better place, they're all on the other side of something that is only scary for the moment that you start it. And after that, you start to move and you break through it and you get through. So anyways, that's my story of how I believe almost dying changed my life. And I hope maybe there's a perspective from you there. So anyways, guys, if you learned anything or if you enjoy these videos, make sure to hit that like button below, hit subscribe, and turn on post notifications for more videos just like this one every single week. Maybe not so much like this one. Until next time.